Today we are going to process a tenderloin, a whole beef tenderloin. So we're back with another episode of Chef Jarvis, and as you all know, steak is my thing. An exotic game. I could do some exotic game too, but steak is my thing. And today we're going to process a an entire tenderloin, beef tenderloin. So obviously, this is where you find the most tender cuts on the steak. Uh, this is where the filet mignon is cut from. So just watch the process. My goal in life in some days is become a butcher. One day just buy a few acres of land, somewhere out when I get, a little bit of money. I don't got a lot of money. I'm nowhere near a lot of money. I got a little bit of money. But when I get even more of a little bit of money, go out and buy some land, retire, and just be a butcher. Like why not? You know, one of my favorite things to do, when I'm just hanging out or I'm meeting somebody, is just randomly talk about the anatomy of a cow. I literally have it in my favorites, and it's very cool to me, just knowing the parts of the cow and like just even being able to go to a supermarket or go to a butcher's shop, a meat market, however way you want to call it, and being able to pick out premier cuts, because you'd be very surprised. All cuts of the same cut is not the same cut. What do I mean by that? All ribeyes are not made the same, right? The ribeyes closer to the shoulder is not made the same as the ribeyes that's like closer to the short loin. The ribeyes is closer to the short loin, um, just a lot less quality than the cuts from the shoulder, or you know, the strip loin that's closer to the butt part of the cow, closer to the rump, or the sirloin, isn't as good as the strip loin that's closer to the ribeye. And just learning about things like that every single day, you know, YouTube is my favorite thing. If you ever see my YouTube algorithm, all you're gonna see is just guys cutting up steaks and educating me even more so on how the process goes, how to look for it. One of my favorite guys, I think his name is Meat Dad. Crazy as that sound, Meat Dad on Facebook. He even inspired me, like just even knowing, because when you go into the supermarket, you might see ribeyes 20.99 a pound, depending on where you go, 16.99, 18.99, and you getting a low quality ribeye. Versus, you go to the chuck section, and you might get a chuck that was like just close to the rib section, as to where you really wouldn't even be able to tell if it was an actual chuck steak or a ribeye. So, and then you got that for $5.99 versus $5.99 a pound, versus paying $16.99. Your ribeye that you got close to the short loin probably $16.99 a pound, $18.99 a pound, and it's less quality. So just even being able to do those things inspires me every single time. You know, I'll say every single time I wake up, but every single time I just even think of a steak, I'm like, you know what? I gotta learn more. I gotta do more. That's why I'm gonna become a butcher one day. Everybody will see I will become a butcher one day, just because like this stuff is just too fascinating to me. Too fascinating. It's like I feel like I'm in anatomy and physiology class back in high school, but when kids ask, "Oh, how can I apply this to real life?" Yeah, anatomy and physiology, obviously, you could apply it to real life, because they're really talking about humans most of the time. But I love steaks, so it applies to me when it comes to thinking about cattle and steak. Like, there's no way I'm not gonna become a butcher in the future. No possible way. But yeah, so as we process the strip loin, it's all just a learning process. This is our first time going through this, and usually we get it trimmed, but this time I was like, you know what, we can get it for $66 instead of $140 if we get it untrimmed. Untrimmed is obviously cheaper, because you don't have to do all this processing right here. And instead of even just buying the fillets by itself. Always go bulk. Always buy in bulk because you obviously get it for cheaper. Literally 5 fillets. I'm getting way more than 5 fillets here. Would have cost me over $100 at Costco. I paid about $60, $66, even though it was a business center, so it's not a 1-to-1 for the entire loin. And I'm gonna obviously cut more since it's not as clean. But let's go back to it. Since it's untrimmed, obviously it's still even more expensive than it's still even more inexpensive than the trimmed ones. But we get this learning process, to go through, and we get it for cheaper. Not to repeat myself too much. Well, look at all this, right? So we got all the extra meat. We gonna end up having a bunch of tenderloins. We're gonna end up having some little fillet bites. Before I made some, well, beef lo mein with, oh man, that was crazy good now that I'm thinking about it. Some beef lo mein, some beef and broccoli lo mein. Excuse me, I'm messing up with some filet. Listen, if the Chinese restaurants learn how to make that or use that quality cut, oh man, they putting everybody out of business. Oh man, try it at home. I know fillets cost a lot of money and they don't, retain too much flavor like other cuts would, but the tenderness mixed with all the sauce of the beef and broccoli, amazing. 10 out of 10. Better than any beef and broccoli you could ever try. Use filet mignon bites. Do what we're doing. Buy a big tenderloin, the little scraps, the little pieces that you can't make into a full fillet. Use that for some beef and broccoli. Simple. It's funny how this whole thing with me, just changed. Now, everybody that knows me knows I love steak, and that's now. But growing up, that wasn't a thing. When I was eating steak, I'm eating the super well done steaks that my family is making. I call it the table shakers, the temple acres. Every single time I'm chewing, I'm getting a headache after the steak. I'm like, okay, the seasoning tastes good. The seasoning tastes pretty good, but my head hurts every time I eat a steak. So you know what? I, a steak, I do it just because it sounds cool, but nah, I don't want a steak. Mind you, I don't even know the cuts that they're getting. They probably getting at best chuck at best. Probably making rump roast, all type eye of round, all types of low quality cuts. I could never now. I could never do that. Chuck, we doing Chuck just for jokes. Anything we got to do New York strip or better. New York strip or better. There's no way I could go back to that old lifestyle. And then the super well done toughness of it. Man, listen. Premier quality cuts is the only way to go. I didn't even find out about marbling until about 5 years ago. That's crazy, and I didn't know how much I was missing out on, and I didn't know, how many people were just like me. Because when I post my steaks, all I see random comments or, you know, one of my friends that say, "Oh no, that's too much blood for me." It is not blood. It's not blood. It is a medium rare is cooked, right? Well, technically, depending on the cut, 'cause some cuts require you to cook it more than just a medium rare. But medium rare, in general, when we're talking about a premier quality cut like a ribeye, New York strip, medium rare, medium, that is completely cooked, right? It's gonna kill all those pathogens on the surface. But again, like that mindset was ultimately the problem. It becomes a doom loop at a point, a super doom loop actually, because you're like, oh, I can't do it because it's red meat. Oh no, no, mind you, it's called red meat for a reason. But I can't do it because it's bleeding. I can't do it. I can't do it. But then you would eat a steak that's super tough and chewy, and your head is hurting. You really don't like the steak. You just eating it because they say steak is of better quality, but you don't really feel it. So it becomes a doom loop cycle. You don't want the red meat that's in the title of the name, right? Say beef is red meat, cow is red meat, right? So you make it white meat, and then it hurts for you to try it. It hurts for you to eat it. So it's just a nasty cycle that at some point we all got to break. There's no reason I'm going up to people, grown adults, and they're cringing at the even thought of even a medium steak. They're like, oh, best I could do is medium well. And I give people a little bit of credit when they try medium well steaks, because at least you got it out your mind. Oh, everything has to be well done. At least you got that part out your mind, right? Medium well is still, I could never do that anymore. It's done for that, that's just disrespectful, especially if you're going to quality cut. Unless you're going like skirt steak, that'd be cool. But you're going to quality cut. You talking some ribeye medium. Well, I mean, ribeye medium well doesn't taste awful, but I still would never. You going to New York strip? Oh Lord, you might as well be eating a hockey puck at that point. So yeah, it's you just know better, you do better, and that's the main thing I go by. You know better, you do better, and now that I know better, I can't go back. I cannot go back. Nope, nope, nope. It's so life has been amazing ever since. Now instead of eating steak, it's a special day or I made steak, and then I know I'm gonna get a headache afterwards. Now I'm just I gotta eat red meat at least like 3 times a week, 4 times. It's so bad. My nutritionist, my nutritionist, I always tell her, be honest with me, be a straight shooter, tell me what I need to do, and I'll get it done. The only problem is if you tell me I can't have too much red meat, but that's when we're gonna have a problem. When you tell me to take it out of my diet. Like I'm not willing to die behind it, but you know, if you don't tell me I'm gonna die about it, I'm not stopping that. Everything else could go. Everything else could go, but the red meat, the steak. Look at this. Come on. You see all that marbling on it? Come on. It's like a science project at this point. I feel like we're doing experiments every single time, and that's what cooking is. At the end of the day, cooking is science. It is chemistry, and I just can't give that up. This is amazing. And then now I buy in bulk. I don't have to just go and buy an individual steak. Prices stay down because of it. Sometimes, hey, I found myself not buying any meat for about 2 months because I buy so much in bulk. Costco is a great place to go if you want to go and buy in bulk and drop the price. You'd be very surprised how overpriced your steak will be, or just any kind of meat will be at your local supermarkets versus Costco. Costco, you can mess around, get some really, really premium cuts of meat for not too much, and obviously it's a bulk version of it, but not too much of a price difference from a low quality cut at your local supermarket. But I'll catch y'all on the next one.